Okay, I'm Ella Ryerson, and today I will be talking to you about physical activity for low-income children and the environmental, educational, and nonprofit reforms that need to occur. Children living in poverty are 25% less likely to complete any amount of physical activity, and they are also 50% less likely to participate in any type of vigorous activity. However, there is substantial emphasis of adolescents engaging in physical activity because early exposure leads to lifelong healthy lifestyles. According to the article, Psychological Benefits of Sports and Physical Activity, sports improve welfare for health, including the prevention of depression, strengthening of the immune system, and reducing stress and pain. According to the Official College of Psychologists in Madrid, Spain, they further build upon this point by demonstrating that those who participate also feel these benefits, as 100% saw exercise as a way to reduce stress, and 85% felt mood was improved after physical activity. However, there are barriers for those in low-income situations, especially children, to participating in physical activity, including unsafe and unfit neighborhoods, the decreasing importance of exercise in schools, and lack of nonprofits with goals to include poverty-stricken communities. Those in low-income communities were more likely to report their neighborhood was unsafe, unattractive, and had insufficient places for physical activity. Parents also did not feel safe in their own community and were not willing to let their children participate freely in sports outside, throughout the community. Public schools were originally made to be an equalizer, and according to the article, The Engagement Gaps, Social Mobility Among American Youth, since the 1970s, upper middle class students have become increasingly active in school sports, and working class has veered in the opposite direction. The involvement of the economically disadvantaged and nonprofits depends on the willingness of the club to promote these measures. There are unfavorable neighborhood and household conditions more often reported by those in low-income communities. According to Sarah Booth, PhD, all residents in a neighborhood are affected by the walkability of their area, and the United States has the least walkable cities. And this further proves the point that those in low-income areas are 20% less likely to use the streets for recreational walking. According to the Urban Institute, 1/4 of American children are exposed to violence, including a weapon, and this number is even higher among those in low-income areas. This causes parents to restrict outdoor activity by using TV or snacks for safety reasons. This then causes those in low-income areas to watch TV for more hours than peers of higher socioeconomic class. And according to a content analysis of products advertised, it is mainly unhealthy food and drinks. Although children in low socioeconomic areas have better or equal access to recreational facilities, they are 40% less likely to use them. However, free outdoor recreation will increase visibility and positively influence social norms, according to Robert Donovan at the University of Australia. The images by Bill Bamberger demonstrate the visible difference of accessibility, maintenance, and importance of sports within communities. Chicago and Atlanta worked to address their high-crime public housing by relocating residents and building mixed-income communities in their place. This led to a 60% decrease in crime in Chicago and a 13% decrease in crime in Atlanta. This leads to the environmental solution that needs to be widespread implementation of mixed-income communities to increase safety in low socioeconomic neighborhoods. This, in turn, will increase walking for exercise, the usage of recreational centers, and overall physical activity. However, the limitations of this include that it is expensive, and families may pose resistance to relocation. When environment can't support, this is where public school comes in. Participation in school sports enhances educational achievement, pro-social behavior, and lifelong healthy choices. However, as emphasis on test scores increases, there is often cost-cutting procedures, and sports often fall. This is where in wealthy areas, parents can pool private donations, and also works to prove the point why there is 2 times the number of sports teams in schools that serve primarily wealthy students. Another barrier that those in low socioeconomic areas might have to overcome is that only 22% of sports offer transportation home. According to the National Association for Sports and Physical Education, there should be 150 minutes of physical education classes each week in elementary school. However, only 8% of schools comply, and there should also be 225 minutes of physical education in middle and secondary schools, and only 6% of schools in America comply. However, quality is also important as of quantity, and only one third of adolescents are physically active in classes for more than 20 minutes a day, 3 to 5 times a week. In addition to this, 29% of elementary schools schedule no recess. There needs to be obligation for increased requirements mandated for physical activity and enforced regulation of these requirements. However, the limitation to this is that children from low-income families gain more weight during the 3-month summer than the entirety of the 9-month school year, demonstrating that healthy habits learned throughout the school year are not always carried over to the summer. Out of a sample of 585 nonprofits, 94% agreed to the statement, "Everyone is welcome at our club, regardless of a person's social, cultural, or ethnic background." However, 46.4% of clubs did not lower financial barriers, social cultural barriers, or facilitate diversity. This demonstrates that nonprofits do not want to exclude in advance, but priorities differ when it comes to inclusion. Two of the main obstacles for nonprofits is the lack of volunteers and funding. For nonprofits, there needs to be an increased amount of funding and requirements to implement inclusion policies. However, the limitations to this is that it is expensive. Nonprofits are self-governing, so it would be difficult to force inclusion, and funding does not always mean conforming to requirements. This then leads into the final solution of requiring physical education and recess in schools, along with increasing funding for safety in neighborhoods, in addition to securing financial backing for nonprofit organizations. This, in turn, will expand the amount of exercise participation for children in low economic communities. Since all the barriers are codependent on each other, the limitations remain as previously stated, such as it will be expensive to implement, children in low socioeconomic areas gain more weight in the 3-month summer than the 9-month school year, and funding for nonprofits does not always mean that they will comply. Winning the fight against accessibility for these children will depend solely on the nation's will to change the social and physical environments in which they live. Thank you.
All right. A couple of questions for you. Question number 1, how did your research question evolve as you moved through the process? And then did your research go in a different way than you had originally planned or hypothesized?
Well, my initial question was, to what extent does a family's socioeconomic status affect their child's accessibility to athletics in the United States? And I did start with this question, but I put keywords into databases like JSTOR and Google Scholar and the Teen Electronic Library, and these would include poverty and participation into sports and other words like that. But then I found the main issues that were coming up, which included environment, nonprofit organizations, and education, and this helped me get my perspectives. And my research did go in a different direction than I originally planned, because I did not think that my perspectives would be different kind of reforms that needed to occur. I thought they'd be more like other perspectives, like people or stuff like that, but it was just reforms.
And then, so the second question, which leads into, if you had more time, what aspect would you continue your research with?
Well, if I had more time, I would conduct more information on the nonprofit reform, because this is the area that had the least amount of information conducted, but it was so interactive with all the other barriers. As stated in my presentation, 94% of the 585 nonprofits agreed to the statement that everyone is welcome at their club, but it also stated that 46.4% of nonprofits did not make any effort to lower the financial barriers. And this statistic was very interesting to me, because I had a preconceived notion that nonprofits were especially made for those in low-income communities, and it was just surprising to me that this was not often the case in nonprofits.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.